So, you have a combination of things going on. I wrote a book called Word Warrior, and it's about a journalist and a writer who lived from 1984 until, I'm sorry, from 1917 to 1984. His name was Richard Durham. And you would probably call him an advocacy journalist and writer because his thing was not only presenting the facts, but doing it with the whole idea of providing information to make the society better, to expose injustices with the intent that you want to affect positive social change.
I was thinking when you were doing the explanation before that there is this, I don't know if it is a code of ethic for the journalist that sometimes maybe when they go to report, they don't try to assert much of their opinion inside. They collect the story. They try to be as objective as possible. So I don't know if you want to say more there. Is it like the story they are telling is neutral? They are impartial. In, so I wanted to spend some time there helping us to clarify that.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, but I think most journalists try to walk it. And that is to talk about the issues, but present as many sides as possible. Some people say, oh, there's always two sides to a story. There may be more than two sides. There's this side, there's that side, and then maybe there's something down the middle or on the other side of that. So it's a you, you're trying to present information, and you have a set time frame. You don't have an unlimited amount of time, whether it's on the page, a virtual page on a computer, whether it's a physical page in a printed newspaper or magazine, whether it's a podcast, whether it's radio, whether it's television, or even in film. You have a limited time frame that you have to tell whatever story it is, and it's really incumbent on the reporter, the journalist, to figure out a way to present as balanced, maybe even balanced is a better word, point of view about the subject as possible.
All right, thank you for that. Now, how would you describe the role of journalists in this sense, no? Because I'm trying to see the work that they are getting into now, no? So, how much? I don't want to say how much important is it, the job that they are doing in the society. But anyway, actually, I'm trying to understand from you. How do you describe their role, the role of journalists in shaping a better narration in society? Let's put it this way.
Well, journalists have an important role to play um, because they are and should be, but mostly they are looking at issues and presenting information that may not be readily available to the general public. Um, Obviously, you have cases where there are investigative journalists, and their goal is to dig deep into items or into subjects and really find out what's going on. For instance, you take the case of Watergate back in the 70s. You have these journalists, Woodward and Bernstein, who said, "Well, wait a minute. There's more going on here about this break-in at the Watergate, which is right down the street here in Washington D.C. That we need to investigate." And they spent many, many hours and days and time looking into what happened at that Watergate, the Democratic headquarters there, who authorized the break in, and how far up the chain did it go. And it obviously led to the White House. Without that kind of determination and skill and interest in really investigating and following that investigation wherever it may take you or them, I think that society benefits or doesn't benefit from not having that kind of dedication. And then obviously, once the reporting is done and then distributed, it does have an impact on the general public because it says, hey, you thought this was going on, but here is the real deal. And of course, you can dispute whether or not some facts are in fact true or not. But the whole idea that journalists can be, I don't want to call them the watchdogs of a society, but they can expose or reveal information and activities that might not normally be revealed, and obviously can have a societal impact, positive and negative.
All right. Yeah. That is a fine line. All right. Tell me about the importance of storytelling in journalism.
It's it's absolutely important. Now, I will say I have never been and have not ever been interested in the kind of reporting which I take my hat off to all of my colleagues who do that. But I've not been the kind of reporter to go out and say, oh, hey, there's a fire down the street, or there's this event. Go out, get what you can, come back, and then have it ready for the 6 o'clock, news hour. My interest has always been to do as much research as possible and dig as deeply as possible so that a comprehensive story could be told. So I've really been interested in more long form journalism on the radio side that enable me to spend weeks or months and sometimes even years on pulling together information and making it cohesive. So I'll give you an example. Um, Back in the early '90s, I was able to and really blessed to be able to work as a writer producer for a series that looked at the history of blacks in radio in the United States. And it was a 13-part series that was a production of the Smithsonian Institution here in Washington. Um, so, what that meant was that myself and the other producers, there were three of us who worked as producers on this series, were able to go across the country to interview men, women, owners, announcers, DJs, listeners who could talk about their involvement with this thing called Black radio and the importance of it, the issues around it, and all of that. So I would say that in a 2 year period, maybe even more than 2 years, we ended up both in terms of archival information, original interviews, music, um, air checks from radio stations. We had probably 300 hours worth of material. Okay. So if you have 300 hours, let's
That's a
say,
lot.
material, that's a lot. But you only have 13 half hours that you can put this information into, then you've got to find a way to distill that into something that's going to be engaging, because you're not writing a report for a class. It's not like, okay, this happened and this happened and this happened, and you're doing it in a way that accurately reflects what happened, but you're doing it in a kind of dry, uninteresting way. If you know that this is going to end up on the air or online or in print or on video or film, then you've got to figure out how to make that story engaging so that people will want to not only start at the beginning and you grab them right at the top, but then you find ways to keep them engaged through the course of that episode or that piece. Whether the piece is a half an hour, like in our case, or it's an hour, or it's 2 hours. And it means that as a writer, you're looking at almost the standard, the 3 act, the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning has to be as compelling, almost like with a print story. The lead paragraph has to grab your attention, so you'll want to read the next sets of paragraphs. It's the same thing in audio, it's the same thing in film and television.